Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. Some of the materials seized from Trump's Mar-a-Lago home could be shielded by attorney-client privilege. NTD's Iris Tao has more on what that means and what could come next.
In a Monday court filing, the Justice Department says it has identified, quote, a limited number of materials that potentially contain attorney-client privileged information. That means some documents the FBI seized could be shielded by a legal doctrine that protects communications between attorneys and clients. And a legal expert says as a result, any privileged documents
should be returned to the former president without further examination and without referral to the part of Justice Department that is seeking the criminal prosecution.
The DOJ says its privileged review team has already reviewed the documents and is in the process of addressing potential privilege disputes. Yet Jim Burling with the Pacific Legal Foundation tells NTD
the Department of Justice is arguing that this has been taken care of. We don't need a special master for this. I think the president's team will argue that, look, it's nice that they're doing a filter team, but we really want somebody who is truly neutral, somebody outside the Department of Justice to review these documents.
And Trump has asked for an independent special master to oversee the review of seized documents. A federal judge said she's inclined to grant Trump's request, but still gave an opportunity for the Justice Department to respond at a hearing scheduled for this Thursday.
Meanwhile, the White House said Monday that President Biden had not been briefed on the seized materials.
The president hasn't been briefed on any of this. None of us have been briefed. The White House has been briefed on any of this. And so we are just going to leave it to the Department of Justice and to ODNI.
Reporting in Washington, D.C., Iris Tao, NTD News.
House GOP lawmakers are demanding a response from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. They want her to comment on President Biden's recent announcement to waive hundreds of billions of dollars in student loan debt. The demand came in a letter from Congressman Jody Hice that was co-signed by 93 other Republicans. The letter noted that Pelosi had said last year, quote, "People think that the President of the United States has the power for debt forgiveness. He does not. He can postpone, he can delay, but he does not have that power. That has to be an act of Congress." The letter calls Biden's cancellation of student debt a massive executive overreach. Republicans say it will only further raise the costs of higher education. Virginia Governor Glen Youngkin is vowing to stop his state's requirement to follow California in adopting strict rules for vehicle emissions. Virginia officials said last week that the state is on track to adopt California's new rules for transitioning to zero-emission vehicles, a bill that was passed in 2021 by what was then a Democrat-controlled legislature linked Virginia's emission standards to California's. In a statement on Twitter, Youngkin called it a ridiculous edict that would eventually ban the sale of gas and diesel-fueled vehicles. He vowed to put a stop to this rule. Virginia House Speaker Todd Gilbert, a Republican, said in a statement last week that Republican lawmakers are also planning to put forward a measure that delinks Virginia's car emission standards from California's. And to assess this trigger law and what it means for the state of Virginia, we have Virginia Congressman Bob Good here with us to discuss. Congressman Bob Good, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be with you, Steve. Thanks for having me again.
Congressman, California could be adopting a new law banning gas-powered cars by 2035. A Virginia bill passed in 2021 linking Virginia's emission standards to California's, basically a trigger law to restrict the sale of new gas-powered cars in California if it does pass this rule. Were Virginians even aware of this, do you think?
I don't think most were. Certainly I saw that this General Assembly controlled by Democrats and the Democrat governor back in 21 did pass this legislation tying us to California. It's unbelievable that we would connect our environmental, climate, energy policies to the most extreme state in the country, the state that can't even heat and cool their own homes, that has brownouts and blackouts and wildfires and doesn't know how to manage their energy policy. It's unbelievable the Democrats would connect us to California in that way.
I mean, to your point, California being its own state on the other side of the country, do you know where the rationale even comes from on something like this?
it just shows how extreme Democrats have become here in Virginia. Our General Assembly, before we took back the House, was extreme, just like the Congress in D.C. The governor was one of the most extreme governors in the country. I would argue that Ralph Northam was the worst governor in the country. Thank God he could only serve one term, and we did not elect Terry McAuliffe, who would have continued those policies. But their model of what the Democrat Party wants to be across the country is California. Democrats look to Europe, they look to Canada, they look to California as the model for how they want to take the country. Just think where we are, Steve. Why in the world would we have our government, federal government or state government, be able to tell us what kind of a car we can drive? How is that an appropriate role of government, to surrender the freedom of citizens to choose what they drive?
Now, just from an infrastructure standpoint, some of your Republican colleagues on the Oversight Committee noted that companies like Ford have turned to Chinese suppliers for battery packs, making communist China the biggest beneficiary when it comes to moving toward this green movement.
Yes, I said on the House floor 2 weeks ago when I was debating the Increase Inflation Act that the Democrats passed, with the part of it, half of it, as you know, $400 billion of it was green raw deal policies that would penalize and tax, reliable fossil fuels, reliable energy, and instead subsidize unreliable unreliable energy sources. What I said on the House floor is the climate crisis is a hoax. It is a hoax. The Democrats are lying about it. This is one of the few crises they've not been able to create. We're the cleanest large energy producer in the world. Our emission standards are higher than they've ever been. We should have a balanced approach. We try to have clean air, clean water, and continue to make progress. But we use the fossil fuels that God put in this earth for us to harvest. It is a lie that fossil fuels are negative or evil or dangerous. Nothing has brought more prosperity around the globe than fossil fuels. And we need to celebrate that and be on offense and try to harvest those resources that God has put into this country, put into the ground for us to use. It is a lie that we have a climate crisis. It absolutely is. That's why Barack Obama lives on the beach in Martha's Vineyard. That's why Joe Biden lives on the beach in Rehoboth Beach in Delaware, because they're not afraid of what's going to happen with the coastal weather or the rising sea levels, as they try to claim.
Congressman, we know your governor there in Virginia, Glen Youngkin, is fighting this. What do you expect to happen?
Well, I'm glad to see that he's fighting it. He's been aggressive and bold in what he said about it. He said he expects us to repeal that in 23. Hopefully, we will expand on our House majority, the House of Delegates, in 23 next November, 16 months from now. And then hopefully we will take over the Senate as well. I think we've got a chance to do that. I think Virginians are going to do like they did a year ago and like Americans are going to do this November and reject the radical policies. Us looking to California for our energy policies is like us looking to Chicago for our crime policies. It's unbelievable what the Democrats will do and who they look to as an example. It's egregious what Democrats in Virginia did, and I hope that Glen Youngkin will be successful in following through on reversing this policy.
Congressman Bob Good, thank you so much.
Thank you, Steve. Great to be with you.